Five, four, three.
Good evening, and welcome to the Reel McCoy. I'm your host, Meffistoe, and always with me, my hetero life mate, Oh My Feelings. How are you, sir?
Doing good. How you doing, bud?
I'm good. What is the Reel McCoy, you might ask? The Reel McCoy is your weekly movie podcast where we ask you to go watch a movie. You watch it, come back to us, and we break it down for you. Today, we finish up our Verhoeven month with a spectacular classic. The movie that was made with one intent and probably hit something else. But this is most of the discussion we'll have today.
Yep.
The movie is Starship Troopers. And to talk to us about it, a guy that has been on the show before and specifically asked to be on this show. And I applauded him for it. Like, we set this up like 4 months ago, Jason.
It had to be like January. It was forever ago.
Like that. Something crazy like that. Jason Sandberg, the man, the myth, the legend. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, fellas. It is fantastic to be back. This show, I love this show. I will watch it in my studio when I'm working on Saturdays. Great show, but it holds kind of a special place in my heart because, as you recall, the first time it was on was right after I had finished fulfilling Jupiter issue 1. So I was like exhausted. And this show, I was able to hang out with you, and we looked at and Tom Connors, and we looked at Tommy Boy, and it was the first chance in like 3 months I was able to just like take a deep breath and just kind of like laugh and not be like in campaign mode and so forth. So I have great fond memories of that stream and in this show. So it's great to be back, and I'm looking forward to sharing opinions about Starship Troopers and sharing some laughs.
All right. And this is your campaign. This is your first issue of Jupiter. Give us 5, 6, 7 words or sentences about it.
Yeah. So Jupiter is in demand on Indiegogo. It's printed. If you put in an order for it, it will ship the following day. But it is basically 40 pages of full color surrealism and superheroics done with somebody, all by me, written, drawn, lettered, colored. But in my DNA is 40 years of reading and loving Jack Kirby, Mike Baron, Mobius, the French artist. All that's in my DNA, and I'm getting it out there in the form of Jupiter. So please take a look, check it out. If you love comic books, it's going to strike a chord with you.
Awesome. Awesome. The link to the Indiegogo is pinned in the description, and we will say hello to the Salty Nerd Podcast Raid. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoy yourselves, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, Starship Troopers. Let's start with Oh My Feelings. Where, when, how did you come across this movie?
Now, I actually saw this film oddly in the theaters,
Okay.
which at the time, a little bit risque because I was a little bit young to be watching this film, to be honest, and some of the subject matter kind of went over my head just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Jason?
So I encountered Robert Heinlein in grade school, and the first Robert Heinlein book I read was Red Planet. And over the years, I read all the Heinlein's books, all the juvie ones, all the more sophisticated ones I read in high school. So when I heard they were making a Starship Troopers movie back in the 90s, I got to go see this. So I saw it like you in the theater, and we'll get to my reactions later. But that was when I saw it in the theater, and like many people, I've been compelled to kind of revisit it. So I think I think it's a great topic for differing opinions, but I think it's infinitely rewatchable. I think you can pull this movie out of the vault, watch it afresh every 3 to 4 years, and it holds up. It's a fantastic roller coaster ride.
I agree. Well, I actually seen this in the theater, and Oh My Feelings, don't be embarrassed, because if there's another R-rated movie out this weekend, Deadpool and Wolverine, and all of the theater, except for me and my wife, were definitely underage. So don't feel bad about it. No,
I'm not embarrassed. I'm kind of wearing it as a badge of honor.
well, yeah. All right, cool.
And see, Meth, and you wonder why I have a fascination with redheads. It's thanks Dizzy.
Oh yeah. We're gonna get to that discussion. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to go deep into the movie with a little segment called Behind the Screens.
Sound production, take 2.
Behind the Screens is where we turn to me and we get the lowdown on everything that is behind the scenes production stuff, all that shindig. Boy, oh boy. 7 different interviews with people to make this research, and all of them deal with 2 things. 1 is the movie fascist or not. 2, the shower scene. No other information whatsoever. So I'm going to have to go to the deep end of the pool for that one. All right. Ed Neumeyer, the guy who wrote RoboCop, wrote a script called Bug Hunt at Outpost 9. That was the name of the script. But when his friends read it, they pointed out a lot of similarities between that and Robert Heinlein's story. Ed Neumeyer said he's never read Robert Heinlein because he saw the moniker right-winger, even though Robert Heinlein was definitely not right-winger. Well, as soon as he saw that, he read the novel, and he immediately optioned the book rights. Nobody ever touched them, nothing, and they licensed basically the name of it. The script... That wasn't me.
My phone, sorry.
Sorry. There's a half an emergency. Don't worry about it. Hold on.
No problem. So, Oh My Feelings, have you read any actual Heinlein novels?
Yes, I have read Red Planet and Starship Troopers.
Okay, very good. And then did you encounter those books before the movie or after the movie?
Oddly,
in a world where I live, having an emergency is something not to be trifled with.
Yes.
A cockroach in the bathtub is not one of those things.
No.
Okay?
No.
So,
but to your question, Actually, I found the Starship Troopers novel after I saw the movie, and I'm like, oh
Okay.
wow! So they is this the novelization of the film?
Okay. You thought it was the Alan Dean Foster adaptation of the
Yeah,
movie or something
it
like
was
that.
an adaptation. So I read like, oh wow, this is very different.
Yeah.
Very, very different. All right. The script was worked on since the early 90s, meaning 91. And it evolved with time. And it actually evolved with the technology itself. Um, yeah, thank you, Paul. The kids do need to do their part. But
All you had to do is just show them the part of the movie, Meth. That's all. That's it.
I
Like, hey,
know,
do your
I
part.
know, but I don't know. And John Davidson, the producer, swears that Verhoeven was the only guy considered for taking up the mantle of the director. He kind of bended reality because at first James Cameron was attached to the movie, mostly because of the similarities to Aliens, and we'll get to that in a second. Paul Verhoeven reportedly read only 2 episodes of the actual Heinlein book, and he tossed it. He thought it was garbage. He never read it again. Up to, I think the last interview I've seen was like 2013. He said that he still hasn't read it. But he had Ed Neumeyer, who wrote the script, fill him in on the rest of the story, which basically was the script. Mark Wahlberg was considered for the role of Rico.
Wow.
And it's not really clear if he was rejected or he rejected being cast in the role.
Just as an aside, it still would have fit as him being the kind of Rico. I wouldn't say he's the sharpest tool in the shed.
Oh,
But
yeah.
just as an aside as well, the characters, how are they supposed to be high school seniors?
Oh, yeah. We'll I think I have a note for it. Maybe. Well, we'll see. No, I didn't write it down, but I remember it distinctly. 3 cast members were all 29 years old.
Yeah.
3 cast members, which was crazy. Where was I? Yeah, Michael Douglas was considered for the role of Ratchek before Michael Ironside. This is because of Verhoeven's tendency to like his actors, and he wants to continue on like hiring them for roles. But it fell through because of mostly he had to do some difficult stuff. Let's just say that, which wouldn't actually go well for a 50-year-old at the time. In a weird coincidence, this is an aside. 2 villains from the 2 Highlander movies were cast in roles for this as good guys. Ratchek is Ironside, and Clancy Brown is Zim for both 2 villains.
That's Private Zim now.
Like I said, Verhoeven liked to work with certain actors, so Ironside was cast. Marshall Bell, who was the guy who was wearing Quato as the guy. Dean Norris, who was a mutant. He's now the major in the boot camp.
Was he Tony?
Tony, yeah, he was Tony in
yeah.
Recall. Yeah. Phil Tippett, who worked on RoboCop, he worked on Ed 209. He was actually designing all the different bugs and stuff for pre-animation, and they also had a full-on large 12-foot animated bug to play with. You could kind of see it in the shot where they go to pee for the first time. Or no, when they hit Tango Urella, where they fight the tanker later, but there's one where they shoot at it and it's lying on the floor, and the guy shoots at it and gets like sprayed with green. That's one of the.
That's when Sugar Watkins loses.
When Watkins kind of shoots at it, gets sprayed. That 12-footer, it's just they took the legs off and brought it down to size. But otherwise, Phil Tippett was also in charge of the CGI, the conversion to CGI, which was normally something that he would be out of his depths because he's a much more of an animated stop motion animator. But of course, his team kind of developed with the time. Oh yeah, Verhoeven and the producers did not have a lot of studio intervention when it came to the whole production. Sony and Columbia, who were in charge of the movie in terms of studio-wise, were going through a lot of like executive changes. Every couple of months, they were changing executive here, the executive there, and nobody was sort of garden walling the entire production. So they had almost no studio notes, and they ended up with an NC-17, not an X rating, an NC-17 rating, but they only ended up to cut away 4 seconds out of the decapitation scene, where they're in the big outpost, and there's a big bug swooping in and decapitating a soldier. They took off 4 seconds out of that particular scene.
Which is so odd. You'd think that more than anything, given how the MPA works, they're more focused on nudity. So you'd assume that there was more of the shower scene that was cut out. That it was like, oh yeah, cut as many kids you want off. That's fine. Don't worry about that. But I swear to God, if you show one more set of boobs,
0 seconds were cut from the shower scene. Right, shower scene. Let's go. The shared bathroom scene was the first officially joint male-female shower scene together. First ever. Although we talked about it when we talked about the RoboCop movie, there is a moment where a female cop is dressing, not undressing, but dressing in the joint cop OCP locker room. And we mentioned this with Tom and with Extra Zero that, this is like the precursor of Verhoeven looking towards the future where male and female kind of dynamics would be sort of tossed by the wayside. I don't see it happening, but it's there.
not for quite some time. But hey, gender is just a construct, Matt.
Yeah. To shoot the scene, Verhoeven and his cinematographer, the cinematographer he used for a lot of his films, Horst Vacano, they cleared everything. They just stayed, both of them, to do the scene. The actors and actresses were very hesitant on doing the scene. Dina Meyer told Verhoeven, well, if you think this is so easy, why don't you and your cinematographer take your clothes off? And the cinematographer was like, yeah, no problem. I grew up in a nude colony. Fuck that. And he took off his things, and it kind of gave Verhoeven like, okay, I can do no wrong. What they did was everybody were in robes. The crew were already nude, and each one of them took off their robe, and it's sort of like parade kind of a thing, just to make everybody easy. And then they started working on the scene. Now, most of the scene, like if you see, the camera does move, but it pans out sometimes, but it actually moves from side to side. So it took a while till they got it done. But by the time they were like midway through, everybody was like, "Oh, I'm okay. It's non-sexual. Blah blah blah. It's okay."
Now, see, that reminds me a lot of remember when we covered Lost in Translation?
Yes.
How Sofia Coppola made Scarlett Johansson comfortable, basically being in her underwear. As she was 17. She's like, no, Sofia Coppola got completely nude.
Well, it's Sofia Coppola.
Yeah.
Right. The propaganda vignettes were trying, kind of trying and kind of succeeding to replicate the Nazi vignettes from Leni Riefenstahl.
Yes.
In terms of style, look, and whatever. But we're going to talk about content when we start talking about it. The army was modeled after the stormtroopers with the specific gray coloring. But
And also the fact, also Carl's uniform for the military intelligence had the total like the SS uniform.
yeah, completely. Both, I mean, both the troopers themselves and the sort of intelligence that were modeled after the SS officers. Very, very much so. On purpose. Just a reminder, Verhoeven was born, raised in occupied Holland at the time, like, of the Nazis. So he was very much influenced because of that. Right. Injuries. Lots of fun. So they shot a lot of the principal photography. Everything you see of Bug Planet is basically a place in Wyoming called Hell's Half Acre. It is very cold at night, and it is supremely hot during the day. So much so that a lot of the extras and Busey had heat strokes. Busey had a massive, like Jake Busey had a massive heat stroke where they shut everything down for a week because they were shooting stuff with him and they could not have him not be there. Dina Meyer got KO'd during the rat check pulling scene where they pulled him. She got hit with an elbow and she was knocked unconscious completely. Casper Van Dien broke a rib from the tanker scene and he chipped 2 teeth. What else? Dina Meyer shoot her gun near Jake Busey's ear. And it's a good thing he had earplugs. Otherwise, it would be close to permanent damage. But she still blew out his eardrum. Where was I? That's about it. There was a lot of like minor injuries, but those are like the major ones. Every trooper from the main actors had to go through a boot camp, an actual boot camp set up by who is it? Dale Dye, who was the military advisor. Denise Richards insisted on doing the boot camp herself as well because she wanted to be one of the guys, even though she wasn't required to because she was a part of the air crew, basically. Reportedly, she had a really good time snuggling in with the cast. But, you know.
Well, she was married to Charlie Sheen for quite a number of years.
Well, and she does have an OnlyFans page with her own daughter. Useless information, I know. Because it was down to like the decision to go full CGI was down to Paul Verhoeven. Because of going full CGI with the bugs, Paul Verhoeven had to play the bug while they were shooting to get reactions from his actors. And because some of the times it was supposed to simulate 12 years old, he had a broom with eyes. And he just lifted the broom and shouted at different actors, "I'm a bug, I'm ready to kill you."
Now, see, that's the kind of behind the scenes footage that you want to see.
I tried.
I kind of wish that it wasn't him actually holding a stick. It was him just hunched over like, "I'm a bug, I'm going to kill you."
The weird part is we mentioned that on Total Recall and on RoboCop that Paul Verhoeven is very energetic when it comes to directing. Mm-hmm. He goes super crazy, and the actors actually liked it and responded to it well because what they got was really good reactions to something horrific chasing them, which is Paul Verhoeven. Now, a little bit of like stuff that is not really related to the production, but it's fun little details. Tammy Adrian George, the black girl from the shower who shot Breckenridge, she's married to that actor till this day. They met on the set. Oh. They have children together. Casper Van Dien was pulling into grab his two daughters from school and the child pickup. And when he picked up his daughters, there were a bunch of boys there, and they were like, "Oh, look, it's Johnny Rico." And after they left, his daughter was like, "Dad, were you naked in that movie?" And he said, "Well, yes." It's like, "You ruined my entire life." I thought it was a great story. One more thing.
It only would have been better if he would have actually looked back like, "Do you guys want to live forever?" And as he peeled out.
The problem is, he answered to the boys, "Why are you're too young to watch Starship Troopers?" And the boys said, "Well, our dads kind of forced us to watch it with them." And I was like, "You're fucking dads." Yeah. In one of the vignettes, you see the cow mutilation bit. It was like at the start, and they put like a censored on it.
Yeah.
The reason why they didn't want to they didn't want to even have any PETA issues whatsoever.
Yes.
Like from the start, it's like nothing from the MPAA. There's nothing like that. They just didn't want to deal with these fucks. That's it.
Well, kudos to PETA for acknowledging that they were fake bugs, because that shows a tremendous amount of discretion on their part.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to ask on that point, is that the reason also why they blurred out the mutilation or the probing of the brain bug at the end?
No. The mutilation of the bug at the end, and this is something that it took me a while to find, is because it actually fits with the whole like there's 3 different sets of censored. The last one, the bug one, was censored for reportedly classified information. That's the excuse that they gave, but it's just to have a cohesive way of keeping those vignettes, right? So it's censored from the start because of one reason, and they just kept going all throughout the movie. And that is about it. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I need a swig of water and coffee. All right. All right, let's play our first game of the night, shall we? Jason, you were worried you're not going to do well. I think you're going to do just fine. Let me set this up.
All right.
Let me set this up. All right, cool. What is our first game, if you might ask? This is Missing Marquee. Missing Marquee for the uninitiated is where we take 10 posters of movies, have their text written off, we display them, and Jason, and of course the chat, will have to guess which movie this is. Jason is pretty good at it, chat, and you've got a long, what do you call it?
Track record.
Lag, sorry, between us and you, so be wary. Let me do this, and this, and this, and that. Here we go. Jason, all you.
First Night?
Not First Night, but it has night in the title.
Oh, Night's... it was the one that had the fake review.
Shannon Sossaman. Yeah, Paul's got it. That's it.
Paul's got it. It is A Knight's Tale.
Black Swan.
Black Swan is correct.
The Fighter.
Not The Fighter.
I didn't see this one. I regret it now.
It's with Russell Crowe.
Yep. And Renee Zellweger. I don't remember.
All right. Paul's got it. I'm just waiting for it to come up. Here we go. It is Cinderella Man. Cinderella Man. Yeah.
Dave?
Dave is correct.
Easy A.
Easy A.
Fantastic Four, The Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Correct.
Oh, hold on. Oh, wait a minute.
This one's really good. And I know Meth hates it, but I like it a lot.
I rewatched it. I still don't like it. I mean, I like the nudity, but it's the armists. I can make it.
I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna say something just for laughs. Reindeer Games Part 2.
No.
No, and Paul's wrong too. It's
Paul
this.
is wrong
Wrong.
or half wrong.
It's what you do at a door. Just do it twice.
If you do
Knock.
at the door. Yes, Paul. It is knock.
Knock.
Machete.
Machete.
Oh, Terminator Genesis.
Not Genesis. It is Terminator.
Terminator
Not
Salvation.
Not Salvation is correct.
The Hunt for Red October, the classic.
That wasn't like, I don't think anyone who's never even seen the movie knows that poster. It's like, yeah, it's a Hunt for October.
All right.
Great
Cool.
movie. Great.
Cool.
It still holds up.
It still holds up. Yep.
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right into the stuff. I think today, and I mentioned this to Jason, and I think my feelings heard me. We're going to talk a lot more. We'll call it politics, but not really politics. We're specifically talking about this movie. So the breakdown is not going to be full on breakdown, but I like to start with Paul Verhoeven intended on making a movie that is sort of putting a sign in front of your face saying, look, this is fascism and this is wrong. What he ended up with is not really that. Not really that, because Robert Heinlein, when he wrote the book, he's not really a fascist. He's more of a, you may call it today as libertarian,
Classical liberal.
classical liberal, somewhere in that vicinity. He ran as a Democrat, anti-government Democrat, I think he ran in California unsuccessfully. And Starship Troopers, the book, was his sort of political manifesto. This is how I think things should be. So, what do you guys think? Let's start
So,
with this.
so my recollection is that Heinlein wrote Starship Troopers when I think it was Eisenhower. It was either Eisenhower or Kennedy. They signed a test ban treaty with the Soviet Union, which nowadays we think that's perfectly plausible. I mean, we know that nuclear weapons work. Why blow up more of them? But where Heinlein was in his headspace and his concern about the Cold War and the encroachment of collectivism, he was mad. He was so mad he wrote Starship Troopers, which is not his proposal or his blueprint for any kind of utopia. It is him playing out the if war is a necessary evil, then what would be the most just way to empower the state to go to war, and who should have the ability to decide how and when we go to war, and how should war be managed, and so forth. So the novel of Starship Troopers, it's not a fascist work of art. It's not a totalitarian work of art, but it is a work of art that says that if the state is a legitimate vehicle by which human beings can kill, enslave, counterfeit, confiscate, imprison people, how should it be run, and who should have a say in how it's run? And in the world of Starship Troopers, the novel, you don't become a citizen by serving in the military. You become a citizen by serving. And some people serve as engineers and civil servants and things like that. So that's a distinction that's often lost when people try to say that it's some sort of dog whistle for totalitarianism. So I understand the novel. I understand that the novel is a thought experiment, and I don't know if later in life he changed his mind about above ground nuclear testing. I hope he did. I hope he said we don't need to do any more of that. But he wrote that book when he was on a tear, and if you look at his larger body of work, he is a Jeffersonian classical liberal. He believes in America. He believes that government is a necessary evil, but it should be constrained and curtailed, and it should only do certain things. certain things, whether it be the municipal functions or whether it be the judicial system and things like that. It should not be running your life. It should be protecting you so that you can run your life. Now, the movie, on the other hand, you mentioned about what the movie makers intended to do. When I encountered the movie, I went into it with having read the book, and I had read it maybe 15 years prior to seeing the movie. When I went to the movie, to me, I was amazed by what impressed me was the structure of the film, because here was a big Hollywood movie that was using essentially what is now today like social media cut-ins and MTV style quick cuts of diegetic media in that world. And there was a bit of it was just the way it was edited, the way it was structured was unique. When I was when I was watching the movie, the vibe that I got was it was a thought experiment of what if Frank Capra was told to go make a patriotic Hollywood movie that he would have made in World War II, but he's doing it in a future where we're at war with bugs. That was the vibe that I got. I did not get hung up on the Hugo Boss stylistic callbacks to the stormtroopers and stuff like that. I either didn't see it or I knew enough about Heinlein that I'm like, nah, they're going for a 1940s aesthetic versus a fascist or Nazi aesthetic. Okay, that was my takeaway. That may have been colored by the fact that I knew Heinlein's books and so forth. So I took the movie as a meditation on war as a necessary evil, but it was also a popcorn movie, and it was also a bit of a satire, to the extent that Doctor Strangelove is not a movie about nuclear weapons.
No.
It's a movie about satirizing bureaucracy and things like that. So that was my takeaway. But I will say that I have enjoyed seeing how Starship Troopers always comes up in conversations. People are still to this day talking about, is it pro-war? Is it anti-war? Is it fascist? Is it making fun of fascists? And I want to just dovetailing back to the Frank Capra comment. In American history, the closest we ever came to being a totalitarian country was during World War II. Under the FDR New Deal and under our war against fascism, that was the point at which the United States government and the military had the greatest penetration into all of our civil institutions and so forth. Now that feathered into the Cold War, but in terms of a daily culture, a daily presence. World War II, and so the 1940s was the most pronounced in the American experience, and that's what I saw them trying to emulate in Starship Troopers. So that was my read on it.
Feelings?
No, I agree with Jason's points. I think by far the biggest dichotomy that you see it's really set up off the very beginning is if you have Ressa's just entire speech at the beginning about his almost near dissertation about the failure of democracy. And just as a fun aside, this is one of several of Verhoeven's films, several of others that we've actually already covered, but most notably this and another film that was also done previously, which was I just forgot the name of it now. I'm so sorry. Never mind. Anyway, no, there's several of these quotes that were actually utilized by the band Velvet Acid Christ in their album Fun with Knives, where they actually broke up his entire speech into segments in the song.
Whose speech? Ratchek's speech?
Yeah, Ratchek's speech.
Okay.
Well, it's conversation like violence, the supreme authority.
Well, it's a part of the it's a part of I'm like I said, I'm going to use the word manifesto, but it's a part of what Heinlein was trying to idealize as what he thinks it's going to be. Like Jason said, I think it's more like where he thinks it's gonna head to, which is probably for the best, which means he wants it to go there. In terms of what Robert Heinlein actually thought, we're too far apart. I just I can't really comment on what he thought back then, and he might have changed his mind. And yes, he was a big proponent of actual like testing and all that stuff. I didn't see him not go back on that, but lots of people were supporting it at the time, and then kind of like, oh, maybe not. But the one thing, and strictly the movie thing, is there's a major problem with how it was all set up, because you start the movie with we're at war with the bugs, but then without mentioning it whatsoever, you go back to school and start at a very earlier point, basically a year before, and then by the time you start talking about the bugs, you have that class where they dissect the bugs, they talk about the bugs, but they don't mention the war. But you have that war vignette already in your head where, like, yeah, we're already been fighting them.
Well, but we already have the propaganda pieces beforehand, being a major proponent of the war and how you can serve, and even the laughing off when the kid like, and I can help too, and I was like, ha, 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 little rascal, you.
Yeah, but the thing is, those vignettes were not, in terms of timeline, were not supposed to be there. They didn't have the vignettes and then go to war.
Yeah.
They went to war and then they had those vignettes because they needed people after Clendathu, all that stuff. But one of the things that he sets up here is how the government structure actually works. There's a bunch of citizens, and there's not really a higher class, but there's another class which is called citizens. And the citizens are allowed to vote, they have special privileges, they have certain other things, but you can still be a citizen, have businesses. It seems very capitalistic rather than communistic.
You still have civil rights.
Yeah, there's still civil rights for
Rights,
the
yes.
civilians, but there's certain privileges that come with serving your country. Now, one of the things were set up in the book and were not mentioned in the movie is if you want to serve, they have to take you. So if you're paraplegic and blind, they will find a job for you to do in order for you to fulfill the 2-year service. That's in the book. It's not mentioned in the entire movie, but it does affect the Ratchek's speech, where he wants his students, particularly Rico, but he wants his students to understand the major differences, because it's a lot of, we'll call it morality base. It even says morality and politics, right? It's a lot of stuff that even says to Rico, do you understand it, but do you believe it, right? So there's a big difference between understanding what it's written as a law or a text, or believing the idea of what it represents. That's the most important thing. And yeah, Verhoeven set this up especially for you to have that mindset of, yeah, we're already in a vignette of a war, and then we're already attacking in Clendathu, and then we're rolling the clock backwards and going into this serene, calm classroom where you have sports, you have, civics, basically civics, and biology, which involves the arachnids.
Which
Sorry, my voice is giving out.
which just as a side, the film really doesn't really touch upon it very much. But what would be more really interesting is if Verhoeven would have included a scene on how they were actually, like, they obtained these subjects for dissection. to have them in high school, in a regular biology class for high school students, for them to be dissecting an alien species.
Yeah, and this is the point. The point is,
Because in the film, you have to kind of consider it like, well, who really struck first?
yeah, I'm. It's not clear. The point is, it's not clear. But in terms of timeline of the movie, not the book, the movie is
Yes,
there is a quarantine zone of planets, because it's not, borders and planets are a little bit different, but there is a quarantine zone in a planet where you're not supposed to put in a colony. And this is why people misconstrued the whole civilian and citizen part. Is it's civilian Mormon extremists that said fuck you to the government and just went to this planet that was supposed to be off limits. So
side note, they really, really hate caffeine.
Deep cut, yes.
Yeah.
No, and a lot of people don't understand it. The fact that it's Mormon civilians that went into a danger zone, which agitated the arachnids, and they struck at the Mormons, and in addition to that, threw the asteroid into Earth, that's what started the war. Not the fact that they killed those Mormons, it's the fact that they also struck the Earth with an asteroid. And a lot of it gets lost with the whole, oh, this is a fascist regime, and this is top-down economy, and all that. And it's through the years, people kind of caught on to the fact that, yeah, because of the editing and how Verhoeven set up the entire movie, that's where it gets lost on the whole, events and why the people were there and why the arachnids basically struck back in terms of, oh, these humanoids are in our territory. It's time for them to die.
So something that I want to point out, for those that think that that it's pro-fascist or that it is fascist, recall that when the first advance against the bugs, when it fails, the military commander who organized it steps down, and then somebody else is then promoted to then go to the next step. If you have a thuggish fascist totalitarian government, it doesn't matter how many mistakes you make, you stay in power. Stalin stays in power until he's killed or until he dies. Hitler stays in power until he kills himself. So this is a point I want to bring out to compare and contrast that there's the people in the society, and if they serve, they become citizens who can then have a say in how the taxes are collected and spent and how military force is used. And then that military structure, when it fails, when it makes a mistake, they huddle like Athenians and make a change to the structure, and they don't execute the general who failed. He steps down. He acknowledges he made a mistake and he misjudged the situation and failed. Someone else goes in and they try the next strategy. That is not a fascist structure. If it was a fascist structure, the general who failed would have executed the people who knew he failed. He would have suppressed any reporting in the news that it failed, and he would have then tried. He would have stayed in power and things like that. So, just want to throw that out there for those who think that. That it's pro-fascist.
There's another thing with the vignettes. In the Nazi regime vignettes, the most famous one, the Goebbels vignettes, the Nazis are never wrong. There is no mistake done. So you had the vignette of the replacement, but you also have a vignette where they said that the Klandathu invasion was a problem, was a disaster, was a bad thing that happened. And you never get that throughout those vignettes. So at the most, it's a lot more of a recruitment vignette than a rah 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 sort of like it's time to fight the enemy kind of stuff. There is fight the enemy, but it's I'm doing my part. It's more like I'm taking responsibility and I'm contributing to society. I'm doing my part. And yeah, they do laugh when a kid says I'm doing my part because it's laughable that a kid would join. But in the Nazi vignette, it wasn't laughter when
No, it wasn't laughable. No.
was the Hitler Jungen was something to celebrate in the Leni Riefenstahl propaganda vignettes.
Yep.
And they don't celebrate the kid having to join. Yeah, they show kids some guns and they give out these trinkets of bullets, but it's not like they're actually wanting them to fight. Or at least I didn't see it that way.
And I do think there's a little bit of again the concept of being kind of a fascist regime and the fascist ideology is a bit lost because it's under the context of the fact that we're fighting in an entirely a different species altogether. Now, had this had been something that was based off of, again, like a Cold War situation, it could be seen in a completely different light, and then perhaps a totalitarian or fascist ideology could be attached to it. But this is a completely different species from the entire different part of the galaxy that we're facing here. So to have this mindset, I agree with you completely, Jason, on that. Like, I don't really, I could see it where they're getting the sort of concepts just given what has been previously done before. But I do believe that Verhoeven was just almost in his own way kind of mocking the Goebbels propaganda.
Yeah, I can see that there is a commentary obviously on the propaganda, and that it's cheesy, and everybody I think having gone through the last like 20 some years, I think we all have I think we're all better at being able to detect when we're being given propaganda. The I think that one thing I want to point out is that most of the movie takes place within the ranks of the military. Okay.
Yeah.
And any military is going to have a command and control structure. There's going to be an org chart. There's going to be strict rules and things like that. That's just the nature of the beast for a military. In those scenes where they show the civilian life, it is it looks like they look prosperous, they look happy, they look healthy, right?
I was gonna say it's prosperous. It's everybody's rich.
Yep.
Everybody's talking about going to Harvard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a flourishing entrepreneurial free society. Part of Heinlein's approach, or his point of view, is that you only have that if around it you have this steel wall of a military that's able to project power and protect the civilians, right?
Yeah.
That's something that if it was the intent of the movie makers to say that Heinlein was a fascist, they didn't do it properly. So if this was truly a dystopia, the people in their civilian lives would have all been trudging to factories to make munitions. They would have been given rations. It would have been like East Germany, right?
Yes.
That is not the case. But because most of the movie takes place within a command and control structure, it seems to be confusing militarism with fascism. Now, if you're a hippie or you're Antifa, you don't know the difference between a fascist and a police officer. You just don't, because that's who you are, right? But if you've got a broader view and a broader understanding of human nature, human history, you know that militarism requires that command and control structure, requires those rules for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, rigid hierarchy. Yeah.
Yep. Now you can say that different military structure. Well, military structures will have a command and control. They'll have harsh rules. Some military cultures are better at adapting and taking information up and down the chain of command and pivoting and making decisions, absorbing change, moving quickly. And you can see that America in the last 20 years has not been able to do that because we've lost like 3 wars in the past 20 years. But point being that if you don't know the difference between fascism and militarism, or military society, or a military chain of command, there's not much this movie is going to be able to do to help you, because
Yeah.
you're already lost. You're already lost.
And the problem is the book, when it comes to telling you about what's going on with the military itself, it's very detailed in the way of, yeah, they will accept everyone. A lot of people are going to wash out. That's not in this movie. Yeah, you see people wash out because of mistakes, but you don't see what Heinlein wrote, which he wrote about, yeah, people just understand they want to get the citizenship, but when they get to the actual military service of it, instead of just regular service, they're like, I don't, it's not for me. Like, it's not for me. So there's a lot of people who just go back to being a civilian, and they accept the fact that there is no going back. And one of the things I wanted to mention, it's something that I think Sargon of Akkad said when he did a full an hour 40 about the politics of Heinlein and the Starship Troopers and the difference between the book and the movie. And one of the things he brought up is something that I remember, but I completely forgot.
Mm-hmm.
In a totalitarian country, okay, whether it's full-on fascism or communism or whatever it is, when it's dictatorship, one of the major factors is the fact that the government or the people around the government are very corrupt. Now, corruption is something that is rampant throughout totalitarian regimes. The only inkling of corruption that we see in the movie, just in the movie, not in the book, in the movie, is the fact that Rico signed something and the major's like turning his head and saying, and not looking at it, and Zim is the one that's tearing it up, and it's like, just go back. I haven't seen it.
Is this your signature?
Yeah,
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. And they just move on ahead. And that's
right.
the only sign of corruption. The disaster in Clondathu is not washed. The guy quits. And another, it's like a Sky Marshal, which is supreme power in terms of military use. They don't talk about any presidents or government or anything like that.
And they don't scapegoat, like they don't scapegoat a minority and say that we failed because and this minority is undermining the state and sabotaging the state. All the usual tricks and the usual hacks that a truly totalitarian society uses, it's absent from the movie and the book.
Yeah, and if you're,
I guess you could. The only kind of fight you could have against that is the fact that they utilize the Clondathu, the arachnids, as the perceived evil other.
yes,
That's the only thing, Jason. To that point,
Mhm.
that was the only thing they could utilize to counteract that point. But yeah, it would still. It's again, it's an entirely different species altogether. It'd be like, well, you know what? I don't like spiders.
in the book, so Heinlein picked bugs because of his enemy was the communists. So he because of the collectivism, he wanted basically like, hey, Korea, they're doing human wave tactics. They're sending tens of thousands of soldiers with one bullet and a rifle against the Marines. It's like an ant colony. And it's the collectivism of the anthill. And so Heinlein's like, obviously he's writing towards a younger audience with his sci-fi books, but he picked bugs because they're collective. They live in a hive. They're collective, and so that's the analogy. And I think that it is true that it is easier to other something that's got 8 legs and it's kind of gross, right? So there's a bit of a cheat there. If Starship Troopers, the novel, had been about humanoid space communists, it might have been harder. To just dehumanize them. But I see your point.
Yeah, one of the we're not going to go into the book because in the book there's a third species, but we'll leave it at that. I just want to concentrate on the movie itself, and one of the interesting parts that I thought, because again, going through these movies and going into the weeds of what made it happen, all the casting, all the stuff. Yes, Paul, the skinnies, is like there are some weird casting in this, and one of the weird casting is a guy that was barely in the movie is the first lieutenant. That is President Ford's son.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He's basically did this part, and I haven't seen any other stuff that he did. But yeah, and he gets killed real fast. And he gets killed real fast.
I forget. Does he fall down when he's running? I forget.
I don't remember how he gets killed, but he gets
I'll have
killed
to watch it again.
fast. But it's it again. It harkens back to the fact that not really in World War II, but in World War I, the first lieutenants were like the most dispensable of the entire army. Those are the first ones out of the trench. Those are the first ones getting hit, and they just got replaced over and over and over again. And yeah, it's one of those things where even Rico, he started as a private and ended up after a few months as a first lieutenant because of stuff that happened.
I love the casting in this movie. Ironsides and Busey, and they're all I found them all to be pitch perfect to the extent that I enjoyed their performances, but they were able to give. So the movie is basically a popcorn movie with some extra layers, but all of the performances by Ironside and by Clancy and by Busey, they give that extra little squeeze to the orange. You get the little more zest in all of their performances, and I think that's I think that also makes the movie this I don't think it would have been as good of a movie without those supporting roles.
Jason, I wholeheartedly agree. I think without Michael Ironside, as Meph had previously mentioned, it was going to be someone else. I just can't imagine anyone else that could carry the cadence that Michael Ironside has as that character. You know, also that with Clancy Brown as Sergeant Zim, later Private Zim.
Yeah, and like it's like the last time most people had seen him was from Shawshank Redemption, and what a difference in terms of like for most people the last time they saw him. I think that's a standout.
That, and even before that, like his last very large role was what, Highlander?
Highlander, yeah.
Yep. And even then he was the stereotypical villain in that film, juxtaposed to his character in Shawshank, and juxtaposed to this character.
We're in the midst of a bug attack. Apparently.
Oh well, the cockroaches
Tell your kids
know
to do
you're
their part
covering.
already.
The cockroaches know we're making excuses for Starship Troopers, so they're in force coming after you.
I was doing my part.
I waited to see a pebble fly against your window. It's their major attack against your home.
But I wasn't using whatever an NRS-70 or whatever it's called, the modified gun that they use. I actually used a tennis shoe.
Another endless point of debate about the movie is the love triangle. Which way would you fellows?
Meph, we're gonna fight about this. We're gonna fight.
It's as if you were reading me and all my feelings texts.
Jason, no, seriously, Meph and I had a conversation about this last weekend.
Yeah, pro war, anti war, that doesn't matter. Which way are you going with?
Okay, you start.
Dizzy.
Me?
Dizzy all the way.
Yes.
Yep.
But yes, by the way, chat, please, I beg of you, you're listening. Some of you are interacting, some of you are not. Please take the time to stop. Either pick up your phone, or if you're watching us on TV, try using your remote or whatever you're using. If you're watching on PC, it's the easiest. Write down Dizzy or Carmen. Okay, that's your choice. I'm not going to do one or two. I can put up a poll, but I'm pretty sure I can put up. See, I'm so bad at this. Add a poll. Yes, start a poll.
Yeah, this is another debate that will never end.
Who will you pick? I'm putting up a poll.
And also, I mean, just in terms of whether or not you should take the movie seriously, or how you should take it. Her death scene is so metal. It's just so
guys,
It's like, yep.
guys, I can see the chat. Guys, don't look at Carmen the way you look at her today. This is pre-Charlie Sheen violation, okay?
Yeah.
This is pre-Charlie Sheen
No,
violation.
it has nothing to do.
she's-
I'm talking about just the character
Yeah.
themselves.
It's not.
Denise Richards.
It's a great topic for debate because it's not an easy decision. It's not an easy decision,
No, it's not. I mean,
but there's a right decision.
There is. I mean,
there is. Oh my God.
sorry, Meth, you're wrong. I'm sorry, buddy.
The poll is completely one-sided.
You lost, man. You just lost completely.
Well, that only leaves Carmen for me.
All right.
The poll is completely
Yeah, she's gonna leave you for another Xander. You fool.
who says I'm not Xander? Anyway, so
That's okay. You never get any, and you get your brain sucked out. So hey, we win.
I'm just gonna stay with this face. This Ed Busey is just the better version of Gary Busey.
Yes, he is the actual sane version of Gary Busey.
Is the actual sane version of Gary Busey. Although he does have the Busey charm. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and come on, the Busey teeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so weird because he had two movies coming out in 1997. One is Starship Troopers and the other one is Contact. He played the religious zealot.
Yeah.
Yep.
And ends up destroying the first contraption. All right. So except for that,
See, okay, Paul, right there. I laughed out loud because I completely forgot that Amy Smart was in this film.
Yeah.
Completely forgot.
oh, I already knew, but she's so like a side character that you completely forget she's there. But yeah,
I do believe this was right before Road Trip.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Jason, you're still staying with us, right?
Yeah, I can say another like 20 minutes. Yep.
Okay. So we'll actually have one more topic and then we'll play the game. So one of the topics I wanted to discuss with you and with you, Feelings, is the role of the media. Now, I'm not talking about the vignettes. I'm talking about the guy who was the reporter who actually gets killed at the end. And
It was the first time we came up with the concept of embedded reporters, right? This was where that came from, right?
and
Well, apparently the arachnids do not care about a press badge. That's all I'm saying.
and it's actually something that Ed Neumeyer wrote about, but Verhoeven took it to the extra step where he was talking about the people who were embedded during the first Gulf War in Iraq, where it was not only CNN, but CNN was the most famous. Like it's made their network basically, where they had those people who were embedded with the troops going into doing Desert Storm
And reporting behind enemy lines. That was the first. That was the first.
Now, Vietnam had people, but they were not really embedded. They were doing sort of, I'm going to say vignettes, but not in the way this movie does.
They were adjacent. They were adjacent to the troops, and they made their presence known to the troops, and they hoped that they didn't get shot.
Yes. But in Desert Storm, it was right there with the troops, like front line stuff. And it was not only broadcast to the States, it was broadcast worldwide, that was the first phenomenon. And this is where this comes in, and Verhoeven specifically said that from Desert Storm, from the first Gulf War, up until whenever we see war, this is what we're sort of expecting. But the criticism is the fact that these reporters really don't understand they are front line and they will get shot. Like in the second Iraq War or second Gulf War, I think 2 reporters got killed. Not to mention when it comes to the whole ISIS thing, a lot of reporters got decapitated. So, abducted and decapitated. One of the famous ones was, I think he was
Daniel
a
Pearl?
British, right? Remember?
Daniel Pearl.
Yeah, he was a British reporter. I think he was from the BBC or the BBC News Report, one of them. And sort of the integration of war and media together to either sell the war or to piggyback off of it and making money off of it. But in terms of using the media as half propaganda, half reporting tool in terms of government use, I would say. What do you think about that? And chat, please tell us if you think something else. No? I can move on to a different topic.
Yeah, it is the media in I'm in the United States of America, obviously, and we've been doing military stuff for over 20 years. And if you journalists are less trusted than people in Congress.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and it
Not
isn't
an American thing, by the way.
Yeah, it is.
Not an American thing.
And it isn't just because of the war correspondence and so forth. But I think ultimately, my take on it is that I cannot. What I would ask is that there not be censorship. If there's not censorship, then I can at least. Well, if there's no censorship, then what the government or the corporate media is telling me, I can know that it might be baloney, but if somebody out there has the truth, it can get to me. Yeah. And that's basically my approach. But yeah, that we could do a whole other show on this topic. But
well,
that's my take.
I wanted to touch upon the fact that in this context of this particular movie, the media is either used for an effect on either the public, the citizens, the civilians, or is it just a propaganda machine or some sort of a take from Verhoeven in terms of the storyline? And I think, like I said, I think it's Verhoeven's criticism about the media where they so the media uses the war to make a profit, and the government, because he thinks it's a fascist government, the government uses the media as a tool for propaganda. They're both kind of earning from each other.
So in the same way that they're all cogs in the same machine, where one piece is just moving the other along.
Yeah, in terms of Verhoeven's viewpoint.
Yes.
If it's America now, America 30 years ago, America 50 years ago, or it's Starship Troopers, if they're trying to recruit you to sign up to be a soldier, they're not going to show you in a rained out trench trying to hold your guts in because your guts have been exploded open by a shell and you're dying there and they're not going to show you that, right? That's just a given. No military, to the best of my knowledge, has shown you that as a recruitment ad. Go ahead.
I would say no. Even in the other positive situation where the guy next to him literally tries to take his boot off and his skin literally
Yeah.
slows off to do trench foot. they're not.
Yep.
They're not
They're gonna
exactly
show
like,
you,
"Oh, yeah, come be a doughboy."
and they're not going to show you after you get out the quality of medical care you're going to get from like the VA. They're not going to show you that. So whether it's now or in the past or in the sci-fi future, um, any military is going to try and romanticize the mission and the effort. Now that is separate from a critique of whether or not a particular military is well run, whether a particular military is being deployed correctly for purposes of foreign policy. Totally debatable, and totally you can take that case by case. But it is just a given that any military recruitment ad is going to show you they're going to romanticize it. They're going to romanticize it. So I would
Well,
expect nothing less.
Well,
All
in
right.
so many ways that reminds me so much because Jason, as you and I both live in the States, remember the Marine ads from the late '90s to early 2000s?
Army of One or which
No, the
one?
actual the Marine ads that make them
The Few, the
look like
Proud?
superheroes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where it's just like, okay, sure.
Well, if you fell for it, you fell for it. Anyway, right. Let's play our second game of the night. It is called
right.
Screen Fighter.
Round one, fight.
Wow, that didn't work correctly. Hold on.
Round one, fight.
Still didn't work correctly. Anyway, two movies, pit them together and see which one is the best one. If there's no discernible difference between the two, both of them are good or both of them are bad, we fall under our criteria, which is Saturday evening, Friday evening, out with the boys, out with the girls, out with your significant other. Two movies in a vacuum. Which one will we pop in? Ba-bam, ba-beam, ba-boom. Dune, 1984, or Pulp Fiction, 1994.
Oh no! Is it date night or is it just me and the
It is
boys?
whatever you choose it to be.
I'm gonna say Dune. I have a fondness for Dune. I love the voiceovers. Dune. When it comes to Quentin Tarantino movies, it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Jackie Brown. Those are better for me in terms of rewatchability. So I'm gonna go with Dune.
All right.
Wow,
Feelings?
that's very odd because Jason, you're the second person that we've talked to recently that really loves Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what happened to you when you saw Jackie Brown Meth?
I fell asleep.
No, give it another shot. Give it another shot.
I watched. No. I fell asleep in the theater
Okay.
because I had an army layoff for 72 hours.
Okay.
So that wasn't fair. That wasn't particularly fair. However, I don't like Jackie Brown. I've seen it at least 4 or 5 times since then. There are good moments in it. There are not really good moments in it. The problem with the story, it didn't grab me. It didn't grab me. And I had higher expectations from it at the time. After rewatching it, it's not a bad movie. It's just not the movie I wanted. I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. I just don't particularly like it.
So my situation is a bit unique from other people because I'm doing I'm doing artwork studio time, like hours and hours and hours, and so I like to have as company like a movie with great dialogue and things like that, and so that's what kind of keeps me company, and that's where I find is something I can like rewatch it again, and I'll be watching it. I'll mostly be listening to it as a story. And I find Jackie Brown to be a wonderful labyrinth of a movie.
Okay.
So next time you try to watch it again, take it from the point of view of I want to observe this movie. I want to experience this movie as a delicately, intricately structured puzzle.
Okay.
This puzzle, and
Okay.
it's not a shoot 'em up. There's no no chase scenes, But in terms of the differing motivations of the characters and the differing understanding of what's happening in the timeline, and when people come to realizations about the others, that's the part of it that I find to be a wonderful clockwork. And and there's great dialogue in there too.
Or I should watch it again to see Chris Tucker getting shot in the face.
So yeah, that always works.
Feelings. This is your favorite movie of all time.
It's up there in the top 5 now. It's been dethroned, but
the German translation is wasted planet or barren planet. By the way, Der Wüstenplanet. Paul or the hot chick.
wow, both terrible comedies.
Yep.
I gotta go with the hot chick.
Okay. Rob Schneider is the dirty
Derp,
derp.
derp, and a derpity derp, derp.
Feelings?
God, thank you, Minnesota Trey Parker. I love you guys so much.
Yeah. They
And
cap-
Raj, and this summer, Adam Sandler in derpity derp, derp,
Yeah,
derp, derp.
exactly. They just captured a moment in time. Feelings? So, hot chick?
No, I'm sorry. I'd still have to go with Paul just because I know it's not a great film, but still, I love Simon Pegg and Nick Frost so much.
I do love them both, but I just thought Paul was unwatchable.
It was not good.
Unwatchable.
No, that's fine.
Oh,
No, it's completely fair.
With Seth Rogen as the alien is a bad choice. Citizen Kane or Pi, and I will flat out start before Jason. I don't like Citizen Kane, and I never got why it's regarded as the best movie of all time. And we'll leave it at that. Go ahead, Jason. Which one will you watch?
I have to go with Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane because of because of its place in movie in cinematography history in terms of the things that Orson Welles did with the camera work and the storytelling, and also the iconic revelation of Rosebud and things like that. I think people will be watching Citizen Kane in 100 years. I do not think they'll be watching Pi.
Okay. Feelings?
Oddly enough, I kind of have to disagree with you there, Jason. I think that Citizen Kane for all of the overall, I wouldn't say hype, but but the accolades,
The esteem,
fostered upon it over the countless near century now. With the first time I saw Citizen Kane, I was utterly disappointed because I'd always been told by everyone I'd ever known, even by my own film critic, actual professors, that this is the best film ever made. Didn't really quite think so. Pi, on the other hand, I thought was a very, very interesting, and one of the, at the time, this was during the big glut of independent films, and this was one of the films out there that you saw it once and you did not forget Pi.
Well, I saw it once and I forgot Pi, and I don't like Citizen Kane, but I would watch Citizen Kane again.
Okay, fair enough.
Misdirection. Beverly Hills Cop or Pretty in Pink? Jason?
I can rewatch Beverly Hills Cop. I would have to be I'd have to be in the right mood to get into Pretty in Pink. Pretty in Pink, I think it does have Dweezil Zappa in it as a cameo, so that scores at some points because I'm a huge Zappa fan. So Pretty in Pink, it's a wonderful flavor, and it serves it scratches a certain itch if you're a certain age or a certain time period. But in terms of reliability, rewatchability, Beverly Hills Cop is just fantastic.
All right. Feelings?
I think this is an easy 3 for 3, even though I think Pretty in Pink is actually one of John Hughes's worst films, to be honest.
To be fair, I preferred 16 Candles. That story-wise, just story.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And it kind of helps to compare those two because both John Hughes, both with Molly Ringwald. So there's a decent comparison. And the stories are completely different, right?
Well, that you can even throw The Breakfast Club in that grouping too.
Kind of, but she
That-
doesn't really lead the movie in terms of female lead.
No, you're right.
There's the Ali Sheedy angle to it, so it's a little bit different. But if you put Peter and Pig and 16 Candles, you can compare the two. Maybe we'll do it someday. All I have to say is Magnificent. I haven't seen Magnificent, so I'm gonna.
It's Maleficent, but
Oh, it's Maleficent? Never mind. I have seen Maleficent.
no, that's okay.
Original Clash of the Titans or The Fighter? Clash of the Titans.
Jason?
So here's what
Island version.
this is my I've got a unique answer because back in the early 80s, mid 80s, we had Clash of the Titans. You know, every kid in America had like 5 videos on VHS. It was Clash of the Titans, Terminator, you know, and so I watched it just too many times. So Clash of the Titans, regardless of its inherent merit, and there's pros and cons to Clash of the Titans. Just because I've seen it too many times already, I'd have to go with The Fighter.
Oh, The Fighter. Okay.
Oddly, Jason, I disagree with you on that point because I was one of those kids and I still love this goddamn movie.
I love it, but I've watched it too many times.
Okay. Feelings?
Yeah, you got Clash of Titans. 'Cause again, I grew up in this movie. I've seen it hundreds of times.
Yeah, and the remakes of Clash of the Titans are a pale shadow.
They're terrible. They're
Well,
just,
also, whoever thought, oh yeah, it's a really good idea to give the plank of wood that is Sam Worthington any acting role ever.
I would pick, despite the fact that it had the Army of Darkness skeletons before Army of Darkness, I would pick The Fighter. I love the story of it. I'm a sucker for a good boxing movie, and this was a good boxing movie. There's a lot like outside of the boxing arena, but I just love it. And to be fair, the character I love the most is the brother, the Christian
Bale's character,
character. He's just fucking phenomenal.
Oh no, The Fighter is a great film. Don't get me wrong.
All right, one last one, and we'll send Jason to celebrate.
There's no comparison, fellas. The Departed. It has to be The Departed. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, unanimous.
It's not even fair. Not even fair.
The Departed is one of his best films, and also he finally won an Oscar for it. 3 6 Mafia won an Oscar before Martin Scorsese, and that is a fact that you cannot unlearn.
Well, it's Hollywood. Yeah, I think that the chat is pretty much unanimous with the Departed. All right. One last thing before you go. Let me just do this and this and that. Jason, let's plug your wares one last time. Please talk to us about Jupiter.
Yeah, so Jupiter is my comic book. I wrote, illustrated, colored, lettered it, the whole shebang. This is the Indiegogo campaign. It fulfilled last year, but it's in demand, meaning it's basically a storefront on Indiegogo. I'm kind of making the rounds because I want to get this book up to 10,000. So I'm on the road to 5 figures on this book. I'm fast at work on Jupiter issue 2, which should launch sometime after the beginning of the year. So I'm trying to get this book up to 5 figures, find some new readers, get some eyes on the book. So I appreciate you having me on. But if you love 1980s indie comic books like Nexus, Zot, Dreadstar, this is a comic book for you. This is going to give you something that's missing from what's at the LCS currently. It's got surrealism. It's got some superheroics. It's got even a pie ad. So check it out. The premise is that it takes place in a world without superheroes. The only superheroes exist in comic books in that world. And this young lady, she and her family are on a trip to a cabin to kind of just get away from a family tragedy. And I don't tell you what the tragedy is. You kind of learn about that as you get to know the characters. But in this trip to this isolated cabin, a hole in reality rips open. And a civil war revolution in a neighboring dimension filled with sorcery and dragons and so forth collides into their otherwise normal world, sets off a chain reaction by which this young lady is going to become her world's first, only, and greatest superhero. So Jupiter has several unique propositions, but one is that it's not going to be overcrowded with heroes. There's one hero, but there's going to be plenty of threats and plenty of adventures ahead. So take a look at this book. I hope you back it. I hope you join me in this journey, but I'm going to continue to be working on Jupiter and telling this larger tale. And it's $13 plus $5 shipping and handling if you're in the United States.
Nice. And the link to the Indiegogo is in the description down below, and it is pinned to the chat right now.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And we will continue deliberating about Disney.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. Few more discussion points. Let me ask you this. Can or cannot, can they do it in 20 minutes?
I would think so, because given the fact that it seems as though the conversation that Carl had with Rico at the math screening booth,
Mm-hmm.
it's never really told or not, but it probably did happen given the way that Carmen was at the dance.
Yep.
So basically, it seems as though Rico had only had sex once.
Twice. Carmen's dad wasn't home, dude. See, this is why you should.
Do you think he went more than once?
What?
Do you think he went more than once?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know. Rico doesn't seem like like much of a man of endurance.
The one that I'm gonna sort of.
Oh yeah, and also in 20 minutes with Dizzy, that got done. That got done.
Yeah, with Dina Meyer, 20 minutes is enough.
Yep, that's good. We're good.
As just a fun little question, but I wanted to go back to this. Once Rico heals from his wounds, he has that. Even inside the production stuff, they even called it the Luke Skywalker tank, which actually Casper Van Dien couldn't actually see Busey and Dina Meyer. He could see shadows. He
had to look at the shadows.
Yeah, he just looked at the shadows. But he was able to do the scene with not a lot of preparations because he's a scuba diver. Yeah. So he's used to having a regulator in front of it, like in his face, and not breathing through the nose, basically. Yeah. So that's an interesting point. But when he does come back and he goes in, he first meets the Roughnecks. They're assigned to the Roughnecks after the big disaster in Clendathu, and he meets his former teacher. There is a big, major story plot hole in it. Can you please elaborate if you know? And if you don't know the plot hole, you're like,
I can't recall.
All right. Guys in the chat, while you have a 20-second lag over me, there's a big plot hole with this. If Ratchik was the teacher when the war started, he was the teacher in Buenos Aires. Did he survive the meteor blast to re-enlist?
Oh, no, that's a fair point.
Did he re-enlist before the Buenos Aires explosion? And which leads me to the fact that why would he re-enlist? Because there was no war going on.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because actually Rico even mentions it to one of the other people, and they're like, oh, well, you know Ratchik before the war. What was he like? He was a teacher. Like, well, is that like, well, he used to smile a lot. He doesn't have much to smile about now that all of his kids got squashed. I'm like, Well, then he would have gotten squashed too.
Exactly. If he didn't get squashed, that means he enlisted or
Before?
re-enlisted technically.
Or maybe there was a missing deleted scene where Rico's signing up was the thing that gave him the inspiration to re-enlist at the dance.
Paul, I'll bring it up. Paul says he was recalled to service post massacre on Port Joe Smith. I have to tell you, Paul, it wasn't told in the movie.
No, not at all whatsoever.
Not in the movie. He never mentioned when he got re-enlisted. He never mentioned maybe he got conscripted, even though conscription doesn't really work. It's still voluntary while the war is going on. That's why they have those vignettes where they specifically telling you it's time to do your part for the war because there's a war going on. Now, before that, you didn't really get any vignettes pre-war vignettes. That it's something to think about because, like I said, because the editing was the way it was, it kind of puts it in your head that, well, there was always a war. But no, there wasn't always a war. So Ratchek was either dead or re-enlisted before the comet hits. Or he was away on a teacher's convention in Brazil. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and also, had an asteroid that size actually impacted Buenos Aires, I'm sorry, but most of South America would have been wiped off the face of the earth. So it wouldn't have been like
the world would, but never.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. So
Oh, and side note too. One of the propaganda pieces that are showing them blowing up the asteroid that's heading toward the planet. Like,
yes.
are you sure? Did you atomize that? Because if you didn't, you just caused a bigger fucking problem.
Yeah, probably. There's a lot of little things that is, in terms of like science, is a little bit off. But you have to suspend your disbelief. You like, especially this is 1997.
Yes,
the whole like, oh, there has to be like real science involved. Let's relax, okay?
I was gonna say the one scene in this film that makes me laugh out loud to this day that would obviously not happen due to the fact of just the concept of how space works.
Yeah.
Is the guy that is floating randomly toward the ship, the escape pod that Carmen and Xander are in, and he just bonks off the front screen.
That would technically crack their shell.
Well, also, like, he would not look like that.
Yeah, no? Yeah. Well,
and the only thing that I could think of is that reminds me of something that would have been in like Spaceballs.
Kind of what they wanted to represent is the fact that when sort of like putting aside, not putting aside, but the fact that it's not sci-fi per se. It's sort of like in Star Trek where there's sort of realism where a ship explodes. It doesn't just go into a boom and there's nothing after that. Sort of like if you think about Star Wars, if a TIE fighter or an X-Wing explodes, it kind of explodes and there's nothing. There's not a lot of debris, where it's because of, we'll just say because of technology, it was easier to represent it that way, where it just goes boom and then it ends with nothing. Where in this,
or like currently
falls apart, and there's some ships that have to maneuver between large pieces of debris and humans and all of that stuff that is accompanied with the fact that there's a big ship and it got exploded filled with people.
Well, I was going to say, just like when you're mentioning Star Wars, just like in The Acolyte, when apparently you can create fire in space and stones can burn.
Like I said, there's a lot of little tiny things. Like Carmen had a full-on tentacle in her shoulder. Now, it would not kill her, but she would have been able to have difficulty walking with
Yeah.
a hole in her fucking arm. Okay. Uh, Suspend your disbelief. Really, you really have to suspend your disbelief. I want to talk about the brain bug, not necessarily the capturing of it. It is something that there's that, not really a vignette, but something that Verhoeven does, and we talked about it when we talked about Total Recall and kind of RoboCop, where Verhoeven likes to piece out his movies with these little transitions. So in this case, you have these propaganda vignettes, but also like there's the newscast when they're talking about the brain bug, and you have two opposing factions.
Oh, a smart bug? Well, I've never heard of such a thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And the other woman were like, why don't you just consider it? Why don't you just be open-minded? And some people said, well, this is like Democrats and Republicans. I don't really think it was
No,
that, but it was mimicking one of those talk show
no,
hosts.
what it's,
They
I think
used
what
to
it's
shout at
it's-
each other.
I think it was more mimicking just the fact of any kind of show that has what they refer to as talking heads.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's a point by point basis where there's obviously someone who they're diametrically opposed on a certain issue, and then they just go at it, and that's the entire point of that show, of that day.
Yeah, and it serves as a, not really a vignette, but it sort of has that transition where in Recall you had those commercials, or in RoboCop you had those commercials, just to piece out the movies and move from one scene to the next scene without it being like a hard cut.
Yeah.
And-
Mike, don't worry. We already did a poll before. Everyone was on Team Dizzy, so you're up.
We
You're fine.
were 100% Team Dizzy. Like, not really 100, like 98 with me in it. I didn't vote. All right. I want to talk about the brain bug and the.
Oh, just as an aside, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other line that, again, I always had to pick out major jokes in films that always will just make me laugh. The other one had to be just Jake Busey's delivery of the line. Hey, I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, buddy, but word is she's dead.
Yes. No, Carmen's this way. Like, I can feel her with the force, right?
Well, no, because again, they set up the whole thing where Carl was able to telepathically
Carl's
link
the
to
one. They kind of jokingly said, well, maybe I pointed you that way. It's implied. Ed, I don't remember if it was Ed Neumeyer or Verhoeven. In an interview like 2008, he said, well, yeah, duh, it's Carl. Told him that. And
Yeah.
it's the first time they had that connection, because it was implied that Carl has issues with doing that with humans. But by the time he was already in military intelligence, it kind of got developed into.
would have escalated, his ability. Yeah. Well, the fact that he was able to psychically read the brain bug.
Yeah, and the fact that he determined that it's afraid, meaning that he's emotionally developed it to the point where it had feelings of afraid, bravery, vanity, all that stuff. The thing about the brain bug, and this is something, again, with comparison to Heinlein's book, Jason talked about the fact that, these are like the perfect communists. But in the book, the arachnids do have a caste system where there's drones, like a hive. There's drones, there's warriors, and there's the upper echelon, sort of like the Politburo of a communist system, where there are the brains, but also there is the queen and the queen's servants that are basically are in charge of with the eggs and reproduction, making sure there's lots and lots of warriors and workers to help out with the expansion of the hive. But the fact that these are bugs that are conditioned not to be communist, but they're conditioned to the fact that they have just the one role, and there's no like, oh, I want to be a worker, or I want to be a warrior, or I want to be a part of the brain system. No, you're born and bred to not have feelings in order for you to do a job like a warrior. And that is the communist perception of what should be, or communist utopia, I should say. And the only thing that's left with the caste system is that brain bug in Starship Troopers, the movie, where to the Starship Troopers world, it's sort of a surprise that the Hive has a caste system, and it's not just brainless warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that. What else? There's not much else, to be honest. I wanted this entire show to be about mostly the politics of Starship Troopers, because there's a lot of little things in terms of like military hierarchy where if you're talking about regular military hierarchy, yes, it kind of works that way, but at times of war, and I talked about it a little bit when it came to Rico's fast-paced promotion, it's all because of something happened, so he has to take over.
Yes.
But Rico had that sort of like take charge attitude from the start. So it was inherent that he would get promoted because he's willing to take charge and basically do the right thing and lead his men. And one of those things is because of Ratchek's went back when he was a teacher, and also when he was his commanding officer, to set an example of how your troopers should act in the case of I'm dead, so you need to do your job and take over and lead these men.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, I
fine.
agree with you.
Okay. Anything else you want to bring up? Otherwise, we can finish up right now.
No, I think, well, otherwise we would just be rehashing just scenes from the film, which I don't think that this film really needs it that much. Overall, I would say overall it's a great film. If you really want to take, flip 6 through home. Yep.
Yeah.
It's really enjoyable, even if you don't have the context of having read the novel. And
for sure. I didn't say it before. I didn't mention it before. I read Robert Heinlein's book really late, so 2011, 2012 ish, something like that. After watching this movie countless times, I sorry for taking over, but I do like this movie as a movie. The fact that it has sort of political repercussions or political, I don't know, agenda of sorts really didn't matter to me at all, because I enjoyed the movie as a movie. I saw the propaganda stuff as a quaint little thing. Vignettes, I didn't really think about the Nazis when I saw this one. It really didn't have any, like, it didn't remind me of them. It didn't like put me off from watching the movie. I really enjoyed the movie. And yes, this movie did a lot of, I think it made like triple the budget or quadruple the budget, but it was critically panned.
Oh, yeah.
It was critically panned, like a lot of Verhoeven movies. Maybe even just Basic Instinct was not criticized, but most of the other movies were heavily criticized for being stupid, dumb, unnecessary, too violent, too much nudity. And this is for like everything that we've covered for the entire month, actually. But they all did good business. All of them.
Which is why he kept getting work.
At the end of the day, yeah. But the movie is really enjoyable just as a movie itself. CGI, I have to say, it kind of still holds up.
Yeah, which is surprising because if you compare it to other films of the time, like as we always bring it back to Blade and like
Or
Blade,
Event Horizon.
yeah, Event Horizon. That's the other film I was thinking of. Velvet Christ always mentions the bit of talking about his descent into madness. His speech about the descent into madness is in the song. But anyway, that's previous point. But no, again, films like that had early CGI that clearly do not hold up compared to this. It actually does hold up very well. Even the one of the major scenes where Rico is atop of the giant scarab beetle that has the shoots the flames. It still functions. It's not like the La Magra scene infamously in Blade.
It's not the La Magra scene from Blade whatsoever, and it's not the weird blood spatters from Event Horizon.
Yeah.
And it's weird because
what's even weirder is it's even better than some of the CGI films that came out after it, like Resident Evil.
Yeah, for sure. And
the first Resident Evil.
Some MCU movies that had really, really, really dodgy CGI.
Some recent ones that have had very bad CGI. Yes.
Which is crazy, but the ships look great. What they did was have models, and then they just digitized them and put them on. The Ticonderoga stuff was created, wasn't actually built, was created, and I thought it was a model. It looks like a model. It's not. And it's, like I said, it's the Phil Tippett studio that did it, where he was really good at animating objects, but once it expanded into CGI, they really worked, and it does look like models, but it's not.
Yep.
And to be fair, what I always liked is what they did with how the bugs fire these plasma rockets into the sky, right? Mm-hmm. Where they use, it's a weird amalgamation of something that leaves a trail behind it. It's weird, but it actually works, and it doesn't look bad. That's what I'm saying. The CGI of it really doesn't look bad.
Yes, which to your point there, I think that's where a lot of modern CGI goes way too off on the deep end, where they can't understand the fact that in most situations, more often than not, a practical effect would work better. And actually, now with modern CGI, actually costs a lot less than modern CGI. But the adaptation that Tippett's group really did was the fact that they were able to realize the fact that if you can make this practically, you can model it to CGI. You just don't have to go to the extra effort in order to give it what they have typically is that extra glossy effect that modern CGI has, where you can tell where your mind can't reconcile it, so it breaks that uncanny valley where it looks clearly fake to you.
Yeah. I want to see if I can grab the bugs. It's really hard to.
Oh, side note too.
I can't show
One thing that was really great in this film was the fact that they actually showed shell casings being ejected from the rifles.
Yes.
That I thought was just, it's a chef's kiss. It's a minor touch, but it's a touch that's important.
I believe, I didn't have it in my notes, but I saw it. I couldn't confirm it. That's why I didn't write it in my notes. 300,000 blanks were used in this.
I would not be surprised.
300,000 blanks were used in this. And there's an issue that was pointed out by like military folks when Rico leads the troops to do the live fire exercise. There's nothing on the sides. and there's nothing on the front. So that's
Really?
end of the course to
Yeah.
signify there's like something that would stop the bullets inside the boot camp, which is something that is like unheard of in real military situations. And you don't think about it when you watch the movie, but if you like I said, if you break it down to like components, you were like, no. Like, no. Like, it breaks all protocol when it comes to live fire. And you have to suspend your disbelief. Know your backstop. Yes, I know, Paul. I know. I know. But that accident with the live fire round, that would have, by the way, if he didn't take off his helmet, that would still kill him.
It still would have killed him. Yeah. I'm sorry. There's no way a tactical helmet would have stopped that live round. No.
Not that up close. No. But otherwise, it's a movie I like to come back to, not just because of how fun it is, also the added political situation and the fact that it's a very interesting doctrine, I would say. It's a very interesting doctrine if you think about it. I'm not quite sure Heinlein actually meant that particular thing. But it is Verhoeven's or Ed Neumeyer's version of it, which is very interesting. All right, cool. Well, shall we talk about next week?
Let's talk about next month.
Next week. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Please, before you leave, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, like always. And join us next week, because next week is a whole new month, and it is Film Disaster Month. Now, it's not a disaster movie, but it's movies that had a disaster.
Productions from hell.
Production from hell. It had a disaster when it comes to actually making the movie happen. Now, it's a variety of movies, and I will start with, I don't remember the first one. I remember the second one. Let me grab it. Do you remember the first one?
Is The Island Dr. Moreau first?
I think it's The Island of Dr. Moreau. Yes. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, it is The Island of Dr. Moreau. And no, we're not going to discuss Waterworld.
Because Waterworld would be a 4-hour podcast.
No, but there's lots of films on this docket, and we had to
cut a couple. Yeah.
We had to. I think Waterworld was on the docket, but we kind of said, well, we'll save it for something else.
Roar was on there.
Roar was on there, but it kind of.
That's a movie that you'd have to actually like there, because if you really go through the pacing of the film, and after like talking about the massive, terrible production that it had, and the fact that some people nearly got mauled to death, by live lions. Yeah.
This is a very interesting question, and there's a very specific answer for this. How many involved Brando? 2, and what we did was sandwich them.
You can guess what the other one is, Paul.
Because if our guest will completely confirm, it's going to be a very, very interesting show.
Yes.
Very interesting show. But for now, it's not super confirmed.
But somebody just guessed one of the films.
See, you guys are smart. Correct.
Yeah.
For that particular reason. All right, guys. Thank you for watching, and we will send you to Tom and Geary, and they're talking about Alien, the first Alien, on their channel. So if you still want to see movie-related stuff, so stay on and enjoy yourself. But
and you can tell them from your friend Out My Feelings. Fuck you, Jonesy.
Don't say that. Guys, remember, hope is a good thing, maybe even the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. We'll see you next week.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.